First thing this morning, I found that meditating before having to speak in front of a group of people is probably the greatest test of focus, and I feel like I've learned something just from that. So I've been coming to the Won Buddhist Temple now for just about 2 years. I was originally introduced to Zen Buddhism as an undergrad about 5 years ago during my junior year. After graduating, I came to New York City for my first real job at a marketing agency. And after about a year in the city, I found my discipline waning between meditating less frequently and growing accustomed to the fast-paced New York lifestyle. I began to realize that Buddhism filled a part of my life that was left empty when I wasn't practicing. So I decided to search for a temple, and that's how I found my way to the Won Buddhist Temple of Manhattan. Today I'm going to talk mainly about the concept of beginner's mind, how it brought me to practice Buddhism as an undergrad, and how it has influenced my practice ever since. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the concept of beginner's mind, it's a Zen concept of approaching things with eagerness and without preconceptions. Basically, you try to approach all things without bias from your previous experiences. If that doesn't make sense to you, I'll get into an example later that might help to clarify it. So I've had many experiences growing up that I think made me predisposed to have an interest in Buddhism. But I feel the culmination of those experiences happened when a friend of mine gave me a copy of this book called On the Road by Jack Kerouac. Though the book isn't about Buddhism, it introduced me to some ideas that got me thinking like a Buddhist. It's about this guy, for those of you who haven't read it, named Sal, who whimsically takes several trips back and forth across the country. And unlike any previous book I'd read, On the Road was not plot-driven. It describes the journey of a young man who has no permanent destination, but is instead able to find meaning in the experiences and in the people that he meets on the road. To someone who grew up in a culture of video games and America Online, this was a novel idea. I was taken up by the proposition that real joy comes from real experiences, not in the latest Nintendo game or as a search result on Google. In a way, reading this book was a small awakening for me. I wanted to have experiences like Sal had, and so it influenced me to be more open to different people and ideas. Around the same time, another friend of mine invited me to join him to a Zen meditation group. At that time, I wouldn't have been able to articulate to you why I agreed to join him, but having learned some about Buddhism since then, I feel that On the Road helped to give me beginner's mind. Being open to different people and ideas, as I learned from the book, is essentially having beginner's mind. The book primed me to be open to and excited about new experiences. So one can say that Buddhism came to me at just the right time in my life. It's kind of like the proverb, when a student is ready, the teacher will appear. The book helped to make me ready as a student, and the monks at the Zen meditation group were there at the right time as my teachers. As many people in their early 20s, soon to be thrown into the real world and forced to find a job do, I began asking myself philosophical questions about my place in the world and what I'm going to do. And Buddhism provided a means to come to those answers. Not that it brought me all of the answers, nor do I think there is a singular answer to the meaning of life that Buddhism can satisfy. Instead, at least at this time, from what I've learned, I think what's most important is that Buddhism teaches you an approach to life. It teaches you that everything is bound to change and that suffering is caused as a result of attachment. Since everything changes, we'll eventually be disappointed when things are no longer how we want them to be. But if you just alter your paradigm just slightly and stop looking at certain states of being like being in a relationship or having lots of money as conditions for happiness, then you'll begin to liberate yourself from that suffering. Change is the nature of the universe, so you need a paradigm that aligns with this. This paradigm is what I consider to be beginner's mind. I personally define beginner's mind as having an approach to life that aligns with the natural order of the universe. So how are these ideas of there being no singular truth and beginner's mind related? And this leads me to my main point. I feel that I've had many little awakenings since being introduced to Buddhism, and each of these little awakenings add up to a clear understanding of the universe and my place in it. Most of these little awakenings were not directly because of Buddhist teachings. That's why I think most Zen proverbs are so cryptic. They almost seem like nonsense. But their meanings are not found in the face value of the words. In that same vein, you'll never fully understand Buddhism if you blindly accept its lessons as the truth. Instead, you need to learn through experience, practice, and contemplation. Buddhist practice, through meditation, has opened me up to many different lessons. It has strengthened my beginner's mind, and that is the real value that I find in practicing Buddhism, and what I hope to communicate to you today. Buddhism doesn't give you all the answers, but it helps to give you the right mindset to approach all situations, which in turn helps to alleviate your suffering. So I'll conclude with a personal example of how beginner's mind has led me to what I consider to be a little awakening. Just over a year ago, I decided to go back to school to take my pre-med requirements. Since I was a business major at undergrad, I had a lot of courses to take, including general chemistry, physics, and calculus. On the one hand, taking those classes after working for several years was kind of grueling, but on the other hand, approaching them with beginner's mind, I felt more equipped than ever to take them on. The material is such a big departure from my previous career path that it's a whole new world of knowledge that I get to navigate my way through. Learning these sciences is the perfect application for me of beginner's mind, since, for one, I'm eager to learn them, and two, I have little prior experience to bias my understanding of the coursework. This allows me to consider the material in a way I never would have as an undergrad, which leads me to my little awakening. And since I'm in a science mindset right now, this example is about science. It's a little nerdy, but I think it gets my point across. As I mentioned, I needed to take calculus. For those of you who are unfamiliar with calculus, it's a type of math that was developed by Isaac Newton to help him to quantitatively describe his principles of motion. Through calculus, Newton was able to describe not just states of existence, like this apple is dropping 20 meters per second, but also its rate of change. So an example of that would be this apple is the apple is currently dropping 20 meters per second, but gravity is causing it to go an additional 10 meters per second faster for every second that it drops. If that's confusing to you, that's okay. My point is, the idea that Newton's math described change struck a chord with me as a Buddhist. Like beginner's mind is a paradigm that embraces change, calculus is a math that describes change. In this way, Newton was a Buddhist without even knowing it. He saw the universe as it really was, a dynamic system that couldn't be explained unless you account for change. This was my little awakening. Even aspects of modern science support the notion that change is an inescapable reality of our universe. Either we learn to embrace it, or we're stuck with a math that inadequately describes how things work. Thank you.